I had a curse put upon me when I was 8 years old. One night, I remember creeping out of my room and into the hallway. A piercing, high-pitched static slithered out of the monolithic CRT television in the living room. I slowly moved my head into the doorway and saw a glowing white circle. My parents had never paid much mind to censorship. In fact, my dad had asked me to watch The Ring with him that night. I had declined, even after his proddings at my newly acquired senses of pride and masculinity, but as the night went on, I began to wonder, why would anyone want to be scared? I wouldn't find out until many years after that day. The fictitious cursed tape had just begun to play. There were menacing and disfigured shapes, devastated landscapes, bodily horrors, and an all-pervading uncanniness. The video buried a rotten seed in my mind. I began to see it everywhere, in every shadow, in every creak in our old house. Every breeze felt like a fiend's breath on my neck. It was even in my dreams. It followed me everywhere I went. I wish I could say I freed myself by wearing a blanket as a cape and rushing right at my demons, or by ripping up my covers and looking under my bed to find out that there isn't a monster there after all. But I didn't. I just forgot about it. I was never attacked. I didn't die 7 days later. I lived in what I thought was hell until I noticed the demons were never out to get me. Fear comes from the threat of pain. The pestilent thought that you were being stalked as prey. Eventually, if it never actually gets you, the fear wanes away. That check isn't going to get cashed. When you turn off the movie, close the book, or quit the video game, you've shut the gate on whatever lies inside. Well, if Silent Hills had been released, maybe not. If you remember, PT was a playable teaser for another game that was yet to be released, Silent Hills. PT was the Aperol Spritz, the aperitif. According to Alana Pierce of Rooster Teeth, there were industry rumors that Silent Hills would require players to sign a waiver before playing. This would allow the game to send emails and text messages to you in real life, as well as perhaps mess with any home lighting connected to a smart system. If true, this would have been, no exaggeration, a waking nightmare. I speculate that this was probably just an idea thrown around in the early planning stages of the game, and it feels unlikely that this could be pulled off in a way that didn't bankrupt Konami by way of lawsuit. But you believed it, right? Be honest, would that be out of step with the lunacy of PT? Is it a stretch to say that this game, or maybe the one it was introducing, would be cursed? Welcome back. In this, our denouement, we will be covering the reception and impact of PT, the tale of its cancellation, and its post-mortem legacy. Thank you for sticking with me. I hope it's been worth it. Here's where we stand. PT has been unleashed on the world. Pandora's box has been opened. Like I said in the first video, the demo was downloaded over 1 million times within a month after its release. The mystery of the game, coupled with its twist ending, propelled it immediately onto the front page of every gaming magazine at the time. Horror games were having something of a resurgence, at least in the public eye. Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Slender, SCP Containment Breach, Outlast, not to mention the dozens of other exhilarating indie games. The YouTube gaming community was primed for PT. It was electrifying, perfect fodder for the reaction-based mainstream, but also intellectually intriguing. It winked at the video essayist, unveiling them to decipher the enigma. Remember that? The massive amount of praise and commendation PT received was impressive in its own right, but also in what it suggested. A new Silent Hill game directed by Hideo Kojima would bring massive hype just on its own. That announcement, coupled with proof that this team knew how to masterfully craft a horror experience, created what was maybe the most anticipated game in the last 10 years. The immense anticipation would turn to an equal amount of righteous fury after the game was officially cancelled. But we'll get to that. Right now, we should get into what's been going on in the Silent Hill franchise the last few years. So, like I've said, PT was my first introduction to the series. I hadn't been around for the release of any actual Silent Hill game or the movies. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't grow with it. My experience and understanding of the series and community at the time was that of an archaeologist. At the time of PT's release, we were 2 years removed from Konami's Month of Madness campaign. They planned to release 3 Silent Hill games in March 2012. Downpour, the next mainline game, Book of Memories, a dungeon crawler on the PS Vita, and the HD Collection, a remaster of Silent Hill 2 and 3 on current-gen consoles. This rush of content was meant to be a shot in the arm for the series, which had been puttering along unremarkably for a while now. What we got instead was a disorganized and disappointing failure. Silent Hill Downpour's reception was mixed. While many people did enjoy it, most saw it as yet another unsuccessful attempt to recreate the style and impact of the original games. Stories of its rushed development and Konami's decision to give the series to a complete no-name developer who would close 6 months after the game's release, telegraphed to fans that the publisher didn't hold the series in high esteem. Book of Memories was a spin-off, top-down dungeon crawler a la Diablo, but without any of the depth or fun, honestly. This release was mostly ignored due to it being on the PS Vita and it not even releasing in the mad month of March. It had to wait for the comparatively placid October. The Silent Hill HD collection is it was controversial. This is all to say that there had been some lean years. The series had been disappointing since Team Silent, the original team working on the games, was disbanded. They are credited with the first 3 games, and the 4th was made by a sort of B team, some younger staff at Konami who had also worked on some of the originals. After Silent Hill 4, production was outsourced to various Western developers, with subpar results. Oh god, Origins, oh god. There was some other influential media in the Silent Hill universe as well. YouTube channel Twin Perfect had released a video series, The Real Silent Hill Experience, in which they gave their interpretations on series lore, story, and development. The videos got quite popular and served as a gateway for many new fans, including me, to get a base of understanding for the games. However, their takes on certain events and themes were soaked in haughtiness and pretension. Their attitude to dissension sparked fights and division in the fandom. A game series that was known for ambiguity and subversion now had people declaring that there were conclusive answers for everything. The Silent Hill fandom was restless. They had been fighting the same little battles for years now. The arrival of PT and the promise of Silent Hills gave people hope. It was a blinking green light on the other end of the bay. There was little question that whatever game was coming was going to be good, but many had a different question. Would Silent Hills be a good Silent Hill game? Despite the brooding and recondite aura I exude, I'm not solely into scary games. As a young dude, my gaming experience was singularly controlled by an older brother. I'm sure many of you can relate. Some siblings ravaged demons in Doom and Quake, some foiled terrorists in Counter-Strike. Mine played Legend of Legaia, Xenogears, and Dance Dance Revolution Extreme. My earliest memories of gaming are turn-based combat, sprite art warriors scuttling around a 2D Sleepy Hollow, and battling fiends of biblical proportions over the fate of the universe, or the multiverse in some occasions. In our house, Final Fantasy reigned supreme, mostly 6 through 10. It was the nexus of almost every interaction my brothers and I had. If you aren't familiar with that series, you might be thinking, there are 10 of them? You might also be thinking, what is the story even about at that point? How do you keep it going? That leads me back to our conversation about PT and Silent Hill. A lot of game series don't do traditional sequels. Far Cry, Tales of, Chrono, etc. Stories, characters, and worlds can change with each new game. What connects them is more aesthetics, gameplay, musical themes, and game feel. I think it's helpful to think of the Silent Hill series this way when talking about what makes a game Silent Hill-like. So, what is it about? What does the Silent Hill skeleton look like? These are what I consider to be the essential properties of Silent Hill, the first 4 games at least. Old school survival horror sensibilities, the town of Silent Hill and its spiritual energy, which, yes, includes the cult in some way. Emotionally tenebrous and impactful monsters, usually in a shape that evokes the human form. Akira Yamaoka's music, and transitioning between states of reality. There was some discord from the community that PT was just too different, and that Kojima was going to pay zero mind to the legacy of the series. I'll be honest, before I really started gathering my thoughts on this, I was inclined to agree. Obviously, it's not a perfect fit, but if we compare this to the other post-Silent games, it stacks up at least as well as the best of those. There are certain things we can only speculate on, considering Silent Hills isn't going to get made, like combat and the extent of the town's involvement, but PT exhibits most of the other fundamental aspects. Also, PT wasn't supposed to feel like a Silent Hill game initially. It was in disguise. I think in retrospect there are a few things that hint at the connections though, like being in a nonsensical space, a nefarious radio, and the discovery and reconciliation of some crime. I think it's especially clear that Koji Pro wanted to do the series right when we look at the game they actually ended up making, Death Stranding. It is way more similar to Metal Gear than anything Silent Hill. If Kojima really didn't care, I think PT would have been a much different experience. Everything is a story. Well, actually, nothing is. Meaning is a myth. We are born in a sandbox and no one is coming to pick us up, so we might as well build some castles. Know what I mean? This narrative we are weaving, it's an odd one, because I keep telling you how it ends. The game gets cancelled, PT gets taken down, millions of expletives are trebucheted at Konami as they walk Pyramid Head and his nurses out to the street corner to make more millions in pachinko balls. We know it happens. I can tell you why, but don't expect it to be gratifying. Like I said in the first video, PT was announced at Gamescom in 2014. It was shown right after the trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5, which was no coincidence. The actual timeline and events are murky, but it seems that Kojima was approached about making a Silent Hill game while he was working on MGS5. There were rumors after the fact that Kojima and his team actually made the teaser in secret, sort of embezzling money from MGS5 to this project. This was denied by Kojima Productions, however, confirming that Konami did want the director to work on a Silent Hill game. This is important to note because we can compare this decision to ones later on and see how Konami's motivations change. This all starts with Ground Zeroes, a prologue to the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 5. Much like PT, Ground Zeroes was initially marketed as a standalone game from a fictional game studio, Moby Dick Studios. Turns out it wasn't, in fact, Joshua Graham making this game, but Hideo Kojima. What a silly boy. At some point during early development for MGS5, sometime around early 2014, I'd say, Kojima was approached by Konami about making a new Silent Hill game. He accepted, and his team began working on it concurrently with The Phantom Pain. After some time, but before August 2014, Kojima asked his friend and acclaimed horror director Guillermo del Toro to take a look at the project. Del Toro loved what he saw, and he joined the development team. In later interviews, Del Toro has said that what he saw at the time was very different from what PT would end up becoming. This could either mean that he was shown the concept trailer, which we will get into, or a much earlier version of the demo. This is also probably around the time Norman Reedus comes on board. Del Toro knew Reedus from a previous project and was most likely the one to introduce him to Kojima. August 12th, 2014. PT is revealed at Gamescom and immediately up for free download on the PlayStation Network store. People play it, people love it, all is right and the sun will never set again. A month later at the Tokyo Game Show, Kojima says PT has been downloaded over 1 million times, and he shows us a concept trailer. I've used footage from this a few times, but have never directly addressed it. This is a seemingly unconnected short clip. It's pretty spooky. It's got bugs, monsters, running hallways. This is, in my opinion, probably what Kojima showed Del Toro a few months back. This is most likely just a vibe check for the producers. Cool, but inconsequential and probably unrepresentative of what Silent Hills was going to be. This is the peak of Silent Hills. Kojima Productions is finishing up MGS5, critical reception and intrigue for Silent Hills is at an all-time high, and this superstar team is going to get free rein to make whatever kind of game they want. The boat is ripping through open water. There's not a cloud in sight. Cool ocean spray sparkles like stardust. Little did the crew know that a primeval beast lurked just below the water's veil, and its rancid, foaming tentacle was about to breach and snap their vessel in two. The name of that behemoth? Mobile gaming. Things at Konami were changing. Things all over the gaming industry were changing. Flagship AAA games are not as profitable as they used to be. The money was shifting over to microtransactions and casual mobile gaming. Pay-to-win games could be made quickly and cheaply, and the revenue they brought was both reliable and massive. Again, I refer you to The Great Debate, where Bob Vids goes in depth about what exactly was happening behind the scenes. In March of 2015, about 6 months after TGS, Konami started pulling Hideo Kojima's name and studio logo off of promo material for The Phantom Pain. Konami put out the vaguest possible statement when reached for comment. We are shifting our production structure to a headquarters-controlled system in order to establish a steadfast operating base capable of responding to the rapid market changes, blah blah blah. Something was happening, and Hideo was on the way out. Konami also renamed Kojima's new Los Angeles studio and redirected his company website to a Konami-owned MGS5 site. Over the next month, speculation ran rampant. There were rumors that Kojima had been fired, that Konami was going to stop making console games, that Kojima was leaving to form his own studio. Kojima's name had also been removed from PT materials, so worry was not spared for the sprouting title. There was plenty of disunity about what exactly these odd alterations meant, but everyone agreed on one thing. This was only the beginning. A month later, on April 25th, Konami announced that the distribution period for PT was set to expire, and it would no longer be available for download on the PSN. This led to even more confusion. The next day, Del Toro was speaking at a film event in San Francisco, and was asked about the current state of Silent Hills. He did not mince words. It's not going to happen, and it breaks my greasy heart. The next day, Konami confirmed that Silent Hills would be cancelled, and PT would be permanently removed from the PlayStation Store. The game wasn't simply cancelled. It was shot into the sun. If you didn't download PT, or if you had downloaded it but had deleted it, you couldn't ever get the game back again. Konami didn't just want to cancel a game. They wanted it wiped off the map and sowed with salt, so nothing could ever grow from it again. A few months later, in August of that year, Japanese publication Nikkei released an article exposing the increasingly tyrannical working conditions at Konami. Break and lunch times were audited constantly, and employees who spent too much time on break were publicly shamed. Cameras were installed throughout the studio, not for employee security, but for all-day surveillance. During production of MGS5, Kojima and his team had to work on computers that were not connected to the internet, and Kojima himself was often not allowed to communicate with his team members. The company was no longer about ambitious, artistic accomplishment. It was now all about the profits. It was about paying people as little as they could get away with, working them to death, and if they tried to quit, making it as difficult as possible to find another industry job. In 2 words, fuck Konami. Like so many before and so many in the future until the glorious upheaval of free market capitalism, Silent Hill's cause of death was corporate greed. However, like the Library of Alexandria, PT may have been lost, but it has continued to live on in the hearts of millions. Perhaps you think I am some rogue weirdo, still theorizing about a 30-minute demo that came out when Shake It Off was blasting on my car radio. Other people's car radios. Point is, this game already had millions of fans, and they weren't going to let this go quietly. Almost immediately after PT was taken down, fan-made replicas of the hallway showed up in every medium that would allow. Unreal Engine, Minecraft, Little Big Planet, Unity, Fallout 4, real life. There have been several attempts to recreate PT in its entirety. Every time Konami gets one taken down, 2 more grow in its place. Again, if you're not super familiar with the games industry, this does not happen every time a game gets cancelled. People were desperate. There were also a few full-fledged games planned that took obvious cues from PT. The most promising, at least initially, was Allison Road. This was a PT clone, and I don't mean that disparagingly. It hit all the superficially important parts: photorealism, first person, no combat, investigation. But in the trailer at least, it seemed to get some of that haunted house spirit of PT. Allison Road sadly won't be coming out, but games like Layers of Fear, The Park, and Visage gave players the opportunity to relive the horror of the hallway. Visage, developed by Sad Square, is still in beta, but a release date should be coming sometime this summer. I've decided to wait until the game is fully released before I play, but the reviews I've seen from both publications and friends have been quite positive. If I have piqued your interest and you're looking for a PT-like experience, this is probably the closest we're gonna get. The most popular game related to PT, in my opinion, would actually be Resident Evil 7. I immensely enjoyed its demo, but the second I finished it, I cried, "They stole this from Kojima." After doing more research, it looks like Resi 7 and its new direction had been decided upon before PT came out, so it's just a happy coincidence. Regardless, I think the success of PT at least made Capcom more comfortable bringing RE back to its roots. PT showed them that old school, powerless horror could still sell, and there was already an audience primed for that kind of experience. On a personal level, PT forced me to reevaluate what I thought a video game was supposed to be. I've always been a lit boy, reading the great American novels with irrepressible inspection, uncovering intent in each and fractious vein. I'd constantly bring up Bioshock Infinite's determinism and Spec Ops The Line's pessimistic morality in an attempt to make people think I was more discerning than I felt I was. Video games were both fun to play and could be narratively deep, but those two ideas existed separately in my mind. All of the shooting and killing and puzzle solving was what you had to do to be rewarded with the story. When I first played PT, I loved it, but I felt strange calling it a video game. What part of it do you actually play? I'd realized that gameplay is a decision. Gameplay could be used to enhance the story. Maybe moving and shooting feels arthritic, making tasks intentionally difficult. Or maybe you can launch across the map and rain death on hordes of opponents, making you feel like the most powerful thing in the room. I could get the compelling narrative I wanted with gameplay acting as more subtle window dressing, like in Firewatch, Gone Home, or Stanley Parable. But I could also appreciate the brass and unusual gameplay of titles like Pikmin, Two Brothers, and The Void, and appreciate how the gameplay told a story all its own. We've spent a lot of time discussing the details of the gameplay and real-world drama, but honestly, that's not the stuff we remember. We remember how something makes us feel. We remember being shaken to our core, and that's exactly what PT did to me and to so many others. After PT left, several projects attempted to cash in on a base of fans ready for a new Silent Hill experience. The one company who didn't seem interested in Silent Hill, however, was Konami. In the same announcement where they cancelled Silent Hills, Konami asserted that they were committed to new Silent Hill titles, but did not officially announce that a new one was in production. With Konami's earlier statements about their new mobile-centric direction, and the release of a Silent Hill 2 pachinko machine in October of 2015, fans had little hope that these new Silent Hill titles were going to be more than petty cash grabs. As it stands now, there are no new Silent Hill games in the works. There was a rumor from a reasonably credible leaker earlier this year that Konami had 2 games in production. One was a soft reboot for the series, and the other a Telltale Games-style narrative adventure. But in March, Konami issued a statement denying those rumors outright. There is, however, a confirmed SH movie on the horizon. French director Christophe Gans said in an interview in February that he is working on what would be the 3rd movie in the horror franchise. Gans directed the first and superior movie, but declined to return for a sequel. This is good news, I think. The first movie wasn't actually good, but it was pretty and campy enough for the fans to enjoy casually. And it had that gnarly skin-ripping scene. The second one was piping hot 3D garbo. I do not recommend. There's another question I'd like to address quickly before we wrap this up. It's clear people want a new Silent Hill game, but should Konami make a new one? Let's take a look at the series right now. There are 9 games in the series, if you exclude the HD collection and PT. The first 3 are universally beloved, and the 4th has mostly positive reviews. But after that, after the games were developed by someone other than Team Silent, it's disappointing. The consensus on the most recent 5 is somewhere between earnest but unsuccessful and lore-shattering heresy. At some point, what is left to make sacrilege of? I feel that people advocating for killing the series want to save the earlier game's reputation, but I just don't buy that reasoning. Yes, Origins messes up a lot of the rules and history of the town, but I think it's perfectly valid to just ignore it. The games you love are still out there, and they're just as powerful as they were the day of their releases. If a new SH game gets made, then of course I want it to be good, but if it's bad, then it can only be bad in its own right. With that being said, I don't think Konami is capable of making a good AAA game anymore, and I would prefer that they just sell the license so someone who actually cares about it can have the chance to revive the series. It's clear that current ownership is not interested in the Silent Hill community, but I am also skeptical that they would consider selling the IP. They can still make big money by plastering the characters and monsters on gambling machines. Silent Hill is stuck in its own nightmare dimension, it seems. I don't think I will ever run out of things to say about PT. One day, I will be an old man, resting in my parlor, Baja Blast Freeze in my hand, and I will tell my grandchildren the story of Hideo Kojima, of Redditors trying to decipher flashlight colors, and of all the fun I had getting to talk about it on a website called YouTube. The world will look very different then, but I know we'll still be able to appreciate what made this demo special. I'd like to thank you again for going on this ride with me. This is the first big project on my channel, and I can't say for certain what my next videos will be about. If you have any suggestions, please let me know in the comments, or you can get in touch with me on Twitter. You can also very gently tap the like button on this video, and post it in some Discord servers. No matter what comes next, I can tell you that I plan on being around for a long, long time. I'm excited to let you all know about Falling from Grace, a Minecraft adventure map set in the SCP universe. The first trailer just dropped, and I highly encourage you all to check it out. I got the opportunity to do some voice acting for this project. I am a huge SCP fan, so this was a dream for me. There are some incredibly talented and passionate people working on this, and I can't wait for it to come out. I will link the project Discord and PMC page in the description. I'll also leave a link to Star Phoenix's YouTube channel. They are one of the lead developers and just an awesome person who deserves a little more of the spotlight. I have also included some resources and charities related to racial and economic injustice. Again, I recommend you check these out and make your voice heard. I can't wait to see you all again. This is Halloch, signing off.